There we are. Okay, we are now live on Facebook. Cool. All righty. Okay. So, anywho. Yeah, for whatever reason, things happen. I don't understand it myself. I don't know why it would do this, but it is. So, I hate it. Okay. So if everybody just bear with us just for a second, let me get caught up here just a little bit. I do apologize. Of course, it is the holidays and, whatever. Nothing seems to work right. Okay. Anyway, I want to welcome everybody that's on and listening in. And I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving feast and, got to spend time with their families and stuff. I hope everything worked out well for everybody. Pretty cool. Couple things that I wanted to touch on tonight, and we have a special guest that's going to be with us. His name is Omar Watchers. I'm sorry. And he runs another podcast radio show. It's called Watchers Talk. Very good thing to listen in on. To get a chance, join up with him there. Check him out. Very informative. He's got some great guests on all the time, and really knows what's happening here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get him up here on Skype. I'm going to bring him up here real quick. Let's see if I can give him a video call here. If I can get him up. Hopefully, ooh, that's a little loud. Hopefully this is going to work.
Hello.
Hi, Omar. Are you with us?
Hi, Clarence. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm having a little glitches. I was going to go live on my phone. For some reason, it's not working, whatever, so I had to go live on a different laptop. And I see Gail's with us, so I know it's working. Hello, Gail. How are you? So, yeah, another glitch in the system.
Yeah, I know exactly how that works. I sometimes have those tech difficulties as well myself. I was just listening to the cast, and my staff in the background was saying, "Hey, when are you going to be on?" And I was like, "Well, it seems like Clarence is having a little bit of tech difficulties here, like we usually do." Right. And they're like, "Oh, that's fine. It's understandable. Believe me, it happens to me all the time."
Yeah, you gotta love modern technology, that's for sure,
That's right. Well, okay, at least it connects us, right?
Yeah.
And, the rest we can figure out as we go along.
Exactly right. Oh, well.
Thanks for having me on your show here this evening, Clarence. I appreciate it very much.
Oh, not a problem. I've been watching and listening to other podcasts and stuff. And I know you're hooked up with the Independent Research Society, just like I am. And, I see, people like Jeffrey Boyd and, Dave and them and whatever. And I'm thinking, it would be pretty cool to get us radio show hosts together somehow and, bounce things off each other and whatever, and just enjoy a good conversation about how we think and what's going on and, stuff like that. So, I thought it was pretty awesome.
Absolutely. Jeffrey Boyd he's a fantastic guy. I love the guy very much. And what he's created there with the Independent Research Society is a beautiful thing, because it brings all of us independent researchers into one area where we can have exchange of thoughts and discuss our theories, and hopefully other researchers can poke holes in your theories, because that's a healthy thing. It's a healthy debate. That allows you to go back and reevaluate your own theories and try to patch up some of those holes. And if you can't patch up those holes, then obviously the theory is flawed. So you gotta pretty much just wipe the board clean and start all over again. So it's a wonderful thing that Jeffrey's doing with the Independent Research Society. I believe it's like powered by over 2,000 researchers globally. So it's a wonderful thing that he's done there. I've had him on my show a couple of times, and wow, that guy has a lot of information.
yes, he sure does. He sure does. Omar, at the same time, I also have somebody else here trying to call in. Let me see who this may be. This is the
okay, sure.
Yeah, this is the 571 area code. Hello, caller, you with us? Hello, you're on the air. 571. No, nobody's answering. I hope it's not a glitch on the board there. So I've had this problem before where I've had people call in and for whatever reason not be able to connect to me, and I don't know why that happens.
I tried that in the beginning as well with my shows, where I had tried to get people to call in, but the software that I have, I'm not sure whether I'm using it properly or is there something wrong, but every time I had a caller call in, my guest would be put on pause and they wouldn't be able to hear what the questionnaire is asking or directing or stating something. So I kind of X that until I figure out exactly on how to do it, right? Man, these tech issues, we're old guys, so it's this is not a walking apart for us.
Oh, that's the truth too. It's definitely the truth. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, and the thing is, because I use BlogTalk Radio, which is out of New York City, and I try to keep things updated as best I can, and I've never had a whole lot of problem with it in the past, but now all of a sudden it seems like it's so glitchy, and I noticed a lot of other people on other platforms also are having problems. So I don't know if it's just them or if it's the whole damn system itself, But it's just, and it seems like every time something new comes out or whatever, you kind of have to play around with it. And, either it's going to work or it won't. It's crazy.
It's a hit and miss thing.
Yes, absolutely.
It's just a matter of time, just figuring it out. And usually at the end, we end up winning it.
Yes.
So we usually end up getting our message across, anyways, and that's the important thing.
Yes, and unfortunately, this site here, their support system is down until Monday, so it's how that works. So go figure. Anyway, what I want to do, Omar, is I have people that are live here on Facebook watching us live, and I got you live on a different computer, so I'm going to try and take this laptop and I'm going to set it up here on the table so people can actually see who I am talking with and see how this is going to work. I'm going to try to bring this around here. I'm going to unplug this. Everybody bear with us here, and we're going to see if we can do this. The last time I did this, I actually used my phone, and it worked out pretty good, so we're going to try and do it this way here. And there we are. They're not going to see me, but they will see you, and they'll hear us, so there you go.
All right on.
Cool.
That's how usually I myself do it. I usually keep myself off of camera and try to highlight my guest as much as I possibly can.
Sure.
Because it's about the guest, and I usually like to give them a free range.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. So there you go. All righty. Well, at least that part's working anyway. We got that going. So anyway, how long you been doing this, Omar, yourself, with Watchers Talk?
Well, Watchers Talk is about 2 years old, and but I've been doing this since I was about 13 years old, so going on to 30 years. I'm 43 years old now.
Right.
And it was about, I would say about 3 years ago that I discovered Facebook groups. And then I thought, hey, wow, what a great platform. And I'm going to use this platform. And then with a friend of mine, Sherry Putnam, I created this group, Watchers. And then from there, we created the page Watchers Talk. And then eventually we got onto our website, watcherstalk.com. Cool. And decided that that we're going to begin doing shows and interview researchers and kind of what have you, and try to bring the topics of our day to light, and try to expose some of the lies that we've been told over the course of our lifetimes, and try to enlighten that a little bit, and then bring that information to the people. That was our goal to begin with, and thankfully we've stuck with that goal, and thanks to my team that works with me, they were very diligent in making sure that that the research that's coming forth is bona fide research from guys like Jeffrey Boyd and Brian Forrester and Bruce Cunningham and Valerie Orloff, people like that, right? So it's so far it's been a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. I enjoy talking to all my guests. I always walk away with new information, new knowledge, and it's always worth it. I love it. I'm addicted.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt.
Yeah, absolutely addicted.
Have you had any UFO alien experience yourself, Omar?
You know what? About 2.5 years ago, I was driving through the Rocky Mountains, and I was close to Hope, BC. And in that area, the only UFO that I've ever seen in my life was at that time. It was a green glowing vessel, size of about I would say about a school bus, a small vessel. And I followed my vehicle for a couple of minutes, and then after that, it just took off, and never seen it again after that. But that's my only real UFO encounter. I can't say that I've ever had an alien encounter, ET encounter of any sort. I'm hoping that I do.
Right.
But so far, it's been no luck from that go. But at least I was fortunate enough to see one UFO in my day that really clarified things for me. That one, I'm not insane, and I'm not just following, going into the rabbit hole and coming out with nothing. That there's something to this. Right. And after seeing the UFO, it really solidified my beliefs in the extraterrestrials, off-world civilizations, and the contacts that human civilization has been having, not even today, but in antiquity as well.
Right. Wow, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I find myself, and I don't know, maybe I'm kind of wrong here about this, but I find the people that actually would like to meet the ETs and stuff are the ones that actually never get the chance. And I find that kind of odd in a sense. Now, I was really young when my stuff all happened to me. And, so I didn't have much of a choice in the matter. And I didn't know anything about it at the time anyway. You know what I'm saying? Back in the 60s and 70s and stuff, I was young. Who paid attention to that kind of stuff, And it wasn't until my encounter that I had, that I got woke up, so to speak, and I've lived with it, I've been living with it. I'm now 56 years old, or will be here real quick. And, I've lived with this my whole life. So, it's definitely a life-changing experience, I'll tell you. Not that I'm trying to brag or anything like that, but it's just the fact that, this is what happens to people. And, you can't change the course, so to speak, And people think you're crazy. They really do when you talk about it. It's getting more acceptable now than it has been in the past. If you notice, there's a lot of things on TV now, especially, and on the internet. Everything is about disclosure, and they're even talking now about JFK assassination being to do with UFOs and the space program and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's starting to fester. It's starting to come to a head, and it's at a boiling point now where I believe that a lot more is going to come out, and it won't be long. They're going to have to change their stories because it's just not going to fit anymore, So this is what I do, and same as you. We get guests on, we talk about things that's been found, and their things and whatever, and we spread the word as much as we can, and hopefully, people grab hold of it and run.
That's right. It's at the end, it's up to the viewer, the information that they take away, and whether they're going to share this broadcast that we bring them. And really, it's up to them from that point on to either brace it or not, right? So we can only do so much, our due diligence, and then once we stream and bring forth that knowledge, it's up to the viewer.
Exactly right.
How they're going to take it, right? And you're absolutely right. There's a lot of programming on television now that I hear about. I myself don't watch television, but I've had friends that always contact me and tell me, say, hey, I saw this on TV. They're talking about aliens and blah, blah, blah. And, so it's nice to hear that this information is slowly coming out and it's not being hidden from us like it has been in the past. And sorry, the denial that's been happening pretty much ever since Roswell. And it's nice to see that the government's stand is changing now. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure whether that's due to the overwhelming amount of evidence and research that's being put on the internet and platforms like Facebook and Google and Steam it,
right?
Or is it just a change of policy from the government themselves?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. And here's the thing too that really gets me. You see, every time they get a new president on board, regardless of who it is, and they say, yeah, I'm going to get disclosure, and I'm going to try to find out this and that, and whatever. Let's face the facts here. He's just a puppet that belongs to them. You know what I'm saying? And the elite, whoever you want to call them, whatever. They're not going to want him in the no zone, so to speak, And I have a funny feeling that if you really looked at it, that any of them that actually claim before the presidency or before they run, claim to have any kind of extraterrestrial sighting or any dealings with, they probably wouldn't even get in office, Unlike folks like unlike Jimmy Carter and them that waited until after the fact and spilled his guts, what I'm saying, or whatever, or Ronald Reagan. But there again, they could never come out with proof either. They were shut down. They so they're in a locked out situation there. There's nothing they're going to be able to do or bring it forward. It's just not going to happen. So. There's other
I think what's happening is that the extraterrestrials, whoever they may be, that are working with the governments of the world, I think they're pressuring the government heads now to bring forth a public disclosure and stop with this nonsense of denial. Mm-hmm. And so I think these guys, they're finally starting to come on board and realize that this is the request made by extraterrestrials, and that the extraterrestrials want us to know that we're not alone.
Yeah.
And the fact that our history is far more older than the mainstream would have us believe. So personally, I think that's what's happening is they're being pressured.
Well, you bring up a good point, and I'm going to ask you something, Omar, and I've tried to figure this out myself 100 times over. Now, we know that back in the day of caveman and on into the Incas and the Mayans and stuff like that, they worshiped gods and they had all that, the Anunnaki and everything. It's all been well documented and written about. Even the Hopi Indian had their Anunnaki, and stuff like that. Visitations were frequent. They happened all the time. They lived here amongst the humans or whatever. They showed them things, they taught them things, they did whatever. I truly believe that we are created by them. That's my opinion. And we can get into that later on. But here's my question, not without getting too crazy here. When do you think it changed, or how did it change? Because they've been alongside man and on this planet for so long. Where did it become a non-disclosure thing? Was it when religion took over, or was it? When do you think it made the big change that we don't know that they actually exist? Back in the Mayan days and stuff, it was normal. They knew they were there. No question about it. So how did that change? Why when, how, why?
My personal thought on that is this cover-up and denial began about 2,000 years ago, after Prophet Jesus, and when Christianity came into existence. And I think it was at that time that the entire cover-up began, because the philosophy in Christianity is that we're made in God's image and that we're the only ones. Mm-hmm. Now, that doctrine being there, they can't really afford that they thought that they can't let people know that we are not alone.
Right.
And I think that time the cover-up began, and it's continued ever since then. And then when Islam came about 1,500 years ago, and they essentially just picked up the ball where the Vatican had and just continued to run with it. And then, of course, after that, the bankers came in, and the currency became the deity that people worship on a regular basis. And it was, they distracted people from the real information and the real reality of what's happening.
Well, that's interesting. And the reason why I say that is because I think back in the day of Jesus's time, we still had the Greek writings, with Plato and all them people. The timelines are a little stretched here and there. I'm not sure who came first, or whatever on that, how that actually worked. But I've always tend to been swayed. Now, I come from a religious background myself. All right, I was born and raised in a Catholic realm up until about the age of 11 or 12. Then my father, believe it or not, switched religions and became an ordained Baptist minister. Then from there, we moved on and we went into the basically like the Pentecostal style church and whatever. But in between times is when I had my visitations and stuff like that, and started studying on my own, so to speak, and whatever, and came up with the idea that the Bible and things like Jesus and whatever is all ET related. Now, that's my opinion. I consider God, as they talk about in the Bible, as a creator. And of course, people say, who created him? Well, it's just passed down. I think it's just like our president, that God isn't just one person. I think he was many people. And God is just a name that they give it, for whatever reason. So, to me, Jesus was probably, an ET of some type or a hybrid. That's my belief. I'm not going to throw that out there for everybody to, whatever. And I'm not mocking religion, but I base religion. I put religion and the extraterrestrials and that in the same box, because that's how I see it, and to me it makes more sense. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's how I've lived my life, And when I read scriptures, not only just the Bible, but the Mahabharata and other ones and stuff like that, the Mesopotamian texts and things, anything that has to do with religion, it all talks basically the same stories, give or
That's
take.
right.
You know, so I don't understand how people miss that connection. I just, you know, and that's my thing, though. You know, so I don't know.
I think you're like right on track with the fact that Prophet Jesus was an extraterrestrial.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mother Mary, peace be upon her, she was a virgin when Prophet Jesus was conceived.
Exactly.
And we can see in many paintings from antiquity where there is UFOs that are flying around and casting a light on Mother Mary, and clearly indicating that Prophet Jesus is not of this earth, that he's a messenger of a much higher being. Now, I wouldn't say God for that matter, because my ideas on God is a little bit different than what we read in the Holy Scriptures of Earth, like the Holy Bible, the Quran, the Torah, the Popol Vuh.
Right.
The list just goes on. And in those, they're described. To me, what they're describing in those books is extraterrestrial intelligence, a physical being that has physically come down here to Earth and made contact with our civilization and gave us the tools that we need in order to create our civilization to be as successful as possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the story of the Watchers, 200 Watchers that came down. They gave us information on civilization, metallurgy, astrology, agriculture. So there are teachers, and to me, those are not gods. Those are extraterrestrials. In my opinion, God is an energy. It's the God energy that's universal. It's everywhere. So when I read in the Scripture and it tells me that God made me in His own image, to me, what I take that as is that He didn't create me physically in His image, but that I'm created from its energy, and that's what I believe that the Scripture is saying as to how we're created in God's image. I think they're talking about energy and our vibration and frequency, more so than physicality of this planet.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Yeah, when I read the Scriptures and it's plural, when it says, you know, let's make man in our image, in our likeness, let us make he, you know, and you know, when you see something like that and you read that and you're thinking to yourself, now, how can that be, you know, so when people ask, you know, well, what do you think God looks like? And I look at him, I go, just like you, just like me, just like, you know, this guy over here or whatever. We are in His image, in their image, in their likeness. They may not have hair, they may not have, you know, whatever, but, you know, we're pretty close, I think, you know. You know, so.
I think so. I believe that we are, you know, I mean, when we come to this earth, we choose to be here, and we choose to be born to the people that we're born to,
Mm-hmm.
and our body is a vessel for us to use in this dimension, in this time and space. So our energy is directly related to God with a capital G, the all-knowing supreme being in the universe. Now, to me, the universe is just not simply this universe, but the entire fabric of universe, like multiverse and dimensions and such like that.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
Because there are no limits for us. We can do whatever we want. There are limits when we come here to this world as a physical being, but once we depart our vessel, you know, we're free to do whatever we want, and the experiences and the knowledge that we've acquired while we're here in this world, when we go back to our natural state, we transfer that information into the universal records. Some people will call that the Ashaic records, and we can access those records while we're here and those records simply exist because of all the experiences of all the people in the entire universe that have taken a physical form and come away with the information and the experiences that we experience goes into that overall universal record.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's just awesome. I really do. I'm glad we kind of think alike on that. That's pretty cool. You don't find a lot of people that do that. They think that you're blaspheming or whatever, and they they get all upset with you. And and I find it odd because like I belong also with the Ancient Alien group there. It's on Facebook also, and I am really surprised to the people that are Christians. And they write a lot about Bible scriptures and stuff, but yet they believe in the ET at the same time. I don't know how you do that. I mean, that to me, that's I don't know. I can't do that. You know what I mean? I have to keep them as one. I can't separate the two. I don't know. I'm not saying Christianity is bad or whatever. God bless whoever wants to do it. That's up to you. But for me, it's just much easier to go the route that I'm going, and if I pray, and if I pray, which I do, I feel like I'm doing nothing more than what the Incas or the Mayans did back in the day when they prayed, whatever, or even nowadays, with tribes and different other ones that have their spiritual gods or whatever, or the Indians or whoever. To me, it's all the same thing. So, however you want to form it, I guess. But
for me, I've removed myself from organized religion altogether. I don't support any religion, and I don't intend to badmouth any religions either, because a person's faith is their faith, and they can do as they choose, just like myself. So I've removed myself from any organized religion. I myself pray as well, but to me, praying is a little bit different. For me, it's not that I'm praying to God.
right.
For me, it's more that I'm telepathically trying to communicate with the greater energy and the frequency and the vibration of the universe and the God energy that I mentioned. I think that we're telepathically trying to communicate with that energy, and to me, that's what praying is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that also. And when I say pray, that's what I meant. I'm not on my knees and bowing my head or nothing like that. I think out loud. I think, whatever. And you'd be surprised at the answers you get, literally, that come back to you. And it's almost like, it's like, bam, here's your answer. And that's kind of what got me to change, and like you say, I renounced Christianity myself. I don't go to church. I haven't been to church, and since I left home anyway, and like I said, my father being an ordained minister and whatever, even he has talked to me about this and has basically, he's come around. I mean, literally, he even told me one time, he said, all these years I've taught and I've studied and I've done everything. And he says, and you make more sense to me than what I've ever gotten out of my Bible classes and stuff, which was really a shock. I never thought he would take it like that, but he did, which was pretty awesome. So,
smart guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Smart guy. He knows. He probably has notes in his own mind to what he's learned over his lifetime, and then when new information reveals itself, I think a person should embrace that change and try to incorporate that into their life, and then come away with a lesson. Like for me personally, I think the greatest lesson that I've ever learned in my entire life was from Michael Tallinger. when he said that everything we've been taught is a lie. And I embraced that cold-heartedly.
Mhm.
My belief is that when you come to realize that everything you've been taught is a lie and embrace it, you've essentially crossed the threshold, and your real learning and education will now begin, because you've unlearned everything that everyone's taught you, because you've come to believe the fact that everything that we've been taught is a lie.
Right.
And to me, that's the greatest lesson I think anyone has ever taught me in my life.
Mhm.
Aside from my kids, being being a parent,
Sure.
that's a great experience as well. But for me, the greatest thing I think I've ever learned in my life was from Michael Tellinger, the fact that everything we've been taught is a lie,
Mhm.
and we have to question everything, and we can no longer continue to take the information at face value from these people that have been lying to us for centuries
Right.
and millennia now.
Right.
Organizations like the Smithsonian, for instance, that cover up everything and don't allow that information to be leaked out to people. They will kill people to suppress that information. So that's, in my mind, that's who I'm in a combative situation with, is just that type of organization that suppresses information, because you and I are in the business of bringing information, the true information as to the things that we've discovered,
Right.
by talking to other people and by reading and researching. So, to me, this is far more beneficial than mainstream TV. Like, as I stated earlier, I don't watch television simply for the fact that it's just bad vibration, bad frequency,
Right.
and they bring you nothing but bad news. It's always murder, death, war,
Yep. Yep.
to bring people's energy down, and they don't give people the opportunity to raise their vibrations and their frequency,
Right.
their energy.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I do watch TV, only the shows, though, that have to do with space and like Ancient Alien series and In Search of and stuff like that. That's about the only thing I watch anymore. I can't get into this other stuff because it's just so, I don't know how you explain it. Well, it's like you said. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I shake my head. I walk away and I'm like, how in the hell can people sit there 24/7 and watch that crap? I mean, it's just unbelievable, So I stick mainly to the science channels and stuff like that, and ancient alien theories and whatever, and I record all them, and that's what I do. Other than that, I don't need it. I can definitely do without it for sure. I get more off the internet and stuff with research and talking to folks like yourself and whatever than I'd ever do on the TV. So, that's how it works.
That's right.
So,
for me, this is the type of programming that I enjoy, and hence I enjoy delivering it to people. And for me, I'm a YouTuber. I mostly just watch YouTube.
Right.
I just don't watch anything on YouTube. I watch, channels like Portal to Ascension.
Right.
They've been around a very long time. They do a lot of webinars. They're good friends of mine, and they deliver a lot of information. Neil Gore and Christina Gore. They have a conference coming up on January 20th and the 21st. ET Disclosure. Cool. There was interview released about a month ago where the government had stated that we're not alone, and that we're in the process of reverse engineering all of the downed crafts that we have found. But the way they said it was they didn't come right out and say it. You kind of essentially have to read in between the lines of what they were saying. But Portal to Ascension is going to be doing that conference on January 20th and 21st. So I suggest people tune in, go like their YouTube channel, because that's the real information. And I watch channels like that, and like Close Encounters, and this is where you get the real information. Mainstream TV is not going to give you real info.
That's true.
That's not the business that they're in. They're in the business of telling you that there's a war and 10 million people died and there's a famine somewhere. That to me is, it's not nice. It's not good.
Exactly.
It's all targeted in bringing people's vibrations and their energy down. I'm a firm believer of vibrations and frequency and energy.
That's absolutely right. I got people here on the Facebook Live. They're telling me I'm having a microphone alert, bad microphone. We lost his voice, cannot follow sentences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to bring this one speaker up a little bit closer to the laptop because that's the channel they're watching, and see if we can't get that a little bit better for him. So hang in there, folks. Let me see what we can do here. We'll bring it right up. There we go. Okay, we'll try that and see what happens. We moved it up a little bit. So anyway, what you got anything new coming up, Omar, or any plans here in the near future? Or
Yeah, Reese, I've got a lot of things on the go, actually. We have an Egypt tour coming up in April 7th to April the 20th. It's called Watcher's Ancient Discovery Tour. It's going to be led by Ildi Baudi and Nemo Tours. So we're trying to put that together. And as well, there's a lot of research that I'm working on. This morning when we were talking, I had sent you a few pics, and the faces on Mars, I find that quite interesting, because Mars has a very rich history.
yeah,
And back in 1982, when they released the picture of the face on Mars, and NASA had said that it was just light trickery and shadows and stuff, there's nothing to it. But after researching Mars and using data that I have access to, I was able to actually find another face on Mars. Not in the Cydonia region, but about a quarter of the way across the planet, there's clearly a face of a woman that's being carved into the mountain, looking up into space, just as we see the face up in Cydonia. Now that information is being suppressed, and they won't confirm that information in NASA. So it's up to researchers like yourself and me and Jeffrey Boyd to bring attention to this type of information. Now, finding another face on Mars, in my opinion, is a huge breakthrough.
absolutely.
Which goes to tell us that there was an advanced civilization that had lived on Mars back in the day, and they possibly do even today. We're just not quite sure as to what's going on Mars, because of the misinfo that's coming out of NASA. The fact that they deny everything. Those pictures, I'll be releasing those pics here pretty soon. But I wanted to share those pictures with the researchers that we work with, like the Independent Research Society, and release it there first, and get the information and feedback from other researchers as to how we can make a game plan and go forward with this, and present this information to the general public, so that people are aware that there's not only one face on Mars, that in fact there's a minimum of two, and possibly even more, on Mars.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty amazing what we're starting to find. Like I said earlier, things are starting to come out, and people, well, of course, this is the younger generation, and this is what's happening now. All these old people, or older scientists and older archaeologists and whatever, that's been in on this stuff, including the Smithsonian and stuff like that, they're going to have to start bowing out, because their time is up. And the new generation, and I hope I'm included in that, even though I'm a little older than most of you, but the ones that are into this, the ones that are doing what we do, are going to take over, and we're going to bring this out. And I'm telling you, Omar, there's going to be a big change here real quick. I can feel it coming, and there's nothing they're going to do to stop it, because it's just the way it is. and they might as well get used to it and either jump on board or jump out of the way. You know what I'm saying? Because
absolutely.
You know,
absolutely. What? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. You know, it's happening, and they better get used to it because there's just too much information out there, and we are finding new evidence every single day. People making new videos and just you know, on and on and on. And you know, the more we gather, the more we spread it, and you know, it's taken off. I mean, it's just wow. You know, we thought the 70s was hot and heavy. You ain't seen nothing. You know, you haven't seen nothing.
I absolutely agree that things are changing. They're changing slowly, but they are changing, and you're absolutely right. It's either these archaeologists, they either need to get on board and confirm the fact of what we're talking about, that they discovered this stuff already decades ago, and they didn't want to tell the people. But now, because of the information age, and because of people like Brian Forster that are, you know, out in the field, and guys like Jeffrey Boyd, Valerie Urloff, Klaus Donna, Laird Scranton, you know, these guys are out there. They're making it happen, and it's time that these guys either, you know, like you said, get on board or beat it.
Right.
Because their problem is that when they don't understand something, they index it under religion, and everything goes under religion. So these guys want us to believe that the ancient people, they worshipped God from the time that they woke up to the time they went to sleep. They ate, drank, and breathed God all day long.
Yeah, right.
And there was nothing else to their life except the worship of gods, and building tombs for themselves and such. And you know, to me, again, that goes back to the negativity of the energy by telling us that you know, a king will come into power, and the first thing that he'll do is to begin building his tomb.
Right.
I think that the pyramids are, you know, there's more to them than what we're told, like the recent discovery of chambers being found in the Great Pyramid.
Right.
There's probably a lot more in there that we're not even aware of, but of course they always label it as a tomb, even though there was no body found in there, there was no mummy found in there. Well, there was a skeleton found in the pyramid, but they don't believe that it was a pharaoh because it just was laying there. I don't think that they would have taken Pharaoh and just threw him in there and just left him be.
Right, exactly. I agree 100% with that. Well, it's always been my theory, as you will, that places like the Great Pyramids, because there are so many of them around the world, it's not just in Egypt, even though, you know, considering the size and whatever, but because there are so many of them, and some of them are even under the water, under the oceans, which means they were here long before the earth tilted and did whatever, you know, and the oceans swap basins and stuff like that, which tells me they were here long before anybody that we knew of. You know what I'm saying? They could have gone back as far as the dinosaur day, as far as I know. You know, we find footprints of man walking alongside dinosaur and stuff like that. So who's to say it never happened that way? You know, I think the timeline of man himself, as far as Homo erectus and stuff like that, is way off kilter. Of course, carbon dating, I always thought that was a fluke. And it never gives us. It's funny, think about this. Every time they come up with something ancient like that, they always give that timeline of 12,000 years. Now, what the hell is that? You know, why is it always 12,000 years? You know,
we should be happy. We should actually be happy that it's 12,000 years now, because just a few years ago it was 6,000 years.
True.
And then it was 5,000 years and 4,000 years. So, you know, these guys are changing their stand, but they're changing it very slowly, right?
Exactly.
So now they're like, okay, well, this was 12,000 years ago. I think what happened 12,000 years ago was the last ice age came to an end, and the people that had taken refuge inside the Earth began coming out. And then when they came out, that's why we see cities springing up all over the planet, because the planet had warmed up, or maybe the tilt changed and the Earth warmed up and it began melting, and this was their opportunity to come out. Like the Hopi, they say the ant people took them underground to protect them, and they finally led them out of the underground labyrinths back to the surface. So to me, that's a clear indication that humanity spent hundreds of thousands of years underground. This ice age that we're currently in is about 2 million years old, and 100,000 years ago the ice age really set in, and I think at that time the pre-dynastic people, the ones that are responsible for building all the megalithic sites, they took refuge inside the earth, and of course after generation after generation some of the knowledge was lost. And now when these people came out from underground, we can clearly see the difference between the construction style. One side is using a huge megalithic blocks that are intricately cut, almost look like that they've been machined, and then the construction that's right next to it, they're using much smaller blocks. They're using soapstone blocks, and in fact they're using rubble to
fit in the gap.
To essentially try to restore what was damaged. But of course they didn't have the technological information, because due to the fact that it was lost over so many generations, that they weren't able to replicate the same thing as the people in antiquity did. As Brian Forrester would call them, is the pre-dynastic people and then the dynastic people. And I think what he means by pre-dynastic is the ones that are prior to the Ice Age, and the dynastic would be us. Like Akhenaten and Nefertiti and things like that. Those are the dynastic pharaohs, and they didn't have the technology that the pre-dynastic did. Because we can clearly see in Egypt that they committed graffiti on some of the ancient structures, and they tried to write in them, but they weren't able to, so they could only scratch it in. And that's a clear indication that the pharaohs of our time that we know about were not as advanced as the academia and the mainstream archaeology would have us believe. It's far more older and far richer in history. Essentially, is where I'm trying to get at. It's like they say, the Dr. Salk with the damage on the Sphinx. From the water. Now, the Sphinx was buried under the sand for, who knows how long, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And the damage that's done on the Sphinx would in itself take thousands of years to happen. So that 12,000 year timeline just simply doesn't make any sense. It has to be far older, because how can a Sphinx be damaged if it's underground or if it's buried in sand? It's not possible. And this is the theory. This is a theory brought forward by a friend of mine, Ildi Baudi, from Mimo Tours, and she visits Egypt quite often. And she's the one that brought this subject up in our last show. She was like, well, the Sphinx was buried in the sand for thousands of years, so how could it be possible? And she's absolutely correct that so that theory in itself needs to be re-examined, and the pyramids as well. I kind of have a little bit of a different take on the pyramids myself. I think that the pyramid is a monument and that the ancient had built, and where the pyramids stand today, I believe at one time that was all water. And when the ancients wanted to build this, the Giza Plateau and the pyramids that are on there, when they showed up, they realized that they can't. This is underwater, and they want this to be above water. So I think they used sound and lifted that land out of the water, which we know as the Tortonian Age, which created the Mediterranean Seas and the Dead Seas. Mm-hmm. And that's why when we see the pyramids, they're at the center of all landmass on the planet. So for me, I believe that the land that the pyramids are built on is artificial in itself, that it was brought out of the water purposely so that they can build this monument where it is today, because it's kind of a little bit too convenient that this place happens to be just at the very center of all landmass. I think that this was deliberately done, and then of course there's a lot of information that's encoded into the Great Pyramid. So for me, I think that the pyramid and the Sphinx, they were all built at one time, and they're part of the same structure, the same machine as Chris Dunn's theory on the Giza power plant. I'm a huge supporter of that. In fact, Chris Dunn's Giza power plant was the first book, second book that I'd ever read. The first one was Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods. Right. Now, I believe everybody's probably read that book, and that really set the course for everyone to be where they are today. It's, that for me was a guiding tool. And then from there, I came across Chris Dunn, and then Emmanuel Voloski, and and so on and so on. So for me, I truly believe that the land that Egypt is, the Giza Plateau is on, is artificial, and they had the technology to create land, because we can see it in the scripture. They're talking about terraforming the earth, and so they already had the technology to make this happen. So I think that's the case. I may be wrong. I'm not sure. It's a theory and work. It's in process.
Right. Absolutely. Omar, I'm going to try to bring this other caller up here. I think this may be Lee, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to see if I can bring them up. Hello, Lee. Are you there? Is this Lee?
Yes. This is not Christy, sir. Yes, this is not Christy. Sorry.
Okay.
This is not. But if you want me, I can talk.
Sure, go right ahead. That's what we're here for. Can you hear him, Omar?
Yes.
I can't hear Lee.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yes. Is this about the ETs?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Can I call you back, because I have a problem with the connection? I call you back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds and 2 seconds, please.
Sure, no problem. Thank you. Okay, he's going to call us back. That wasn't Lee, but it was a person interested in talking to us about ETs and stuff here. So they're going to try to call us back and see. I'm not sure why you're not hearing him. I'm hoping. Okay, looks like he's calling us back here. So let's try to bring him back up again here, and let's see what happens. Hello, sir. How are you?
Yes. Yes. This is Vijay, and can you hear me loud and clear, sir?
I can hear you. I don't know if Omar can hear you. Omar, can you hear him?
No, sir, I can't.
Okay, let me...
Yes. When I talk to you, you hear me good. But when you talk to me, I don't hear you good. Well, so let me try one more trick. I'll right back with you, sir.
Okay, very good. Sure.
I will call you back.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm gonna bring this microphone and camera closer together there, Omar, and hopefully you can hear him. We're gonna try this again. One way or the other, we're gonna get this to work.
I love the attitude.
There you
That's
go.
Wonderful.
So if you see my video change, it's because it's all in one, so to speak. I'm for Skype. So yeah, but I'm hoping it comes out okay. I'm waiting for him to call back here. Would be interesting to see what he has to say.
Yeah, I'm interested as well. I love hearing other people's thoughts on the extraterrestrials, because everyone has a different opinion and a perspective on what extraterrestrials really are. To some of us, they're just physical, and for some, they're interdimensional beings, and that may be possible that there's interdimensional beings and physical beings that are visiting our planet. So it's always nice to hear from other people, from like-minded people.
Absolutely, I definitely agree.
I always enjoy that.
That's great. Let's see here. I'm hoping maybe he's changing his phone or something. I'm not sure, but give him a few minutes here and we'll wait for him to boot back up here. Anyway,
so I've got a question for you, Clarence.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, I've asked this question to my guests on numerous occasions, and I've gotten some fantastic answers from them. So I'd like to hear your opinion on this. Now, when we look on our planet, we have two different types of pyramids that are being built. One is a pentagonal pyramid, and the other is a step pyramid. Mm-hmm. Now, in your opinion, why do you think that they created two different types of pyramids? They must serve a different function as the fact that there are two different types of pyramids.
Well, if you look at some of the Mayan pyramids, especially down towards Ecuador in that area, as you may know, I'm sure, they did find out that they were used for gold smelting, a few of them. They were lined with mercury and different other things, and matter of fact, that one was ruined by fire, which means, there was some type of an explosion or something happened there, that went on. So I think it was just a different form of energy source, one way or the other. Like you say, I think the ones like in Egypt and that was solid energy, more like electricity and whatever, where the ones probably in the Mayan days and whatever was used as some type of a smelting place, like a factory, so be it, whatever, things like that. Not only that, but I almost think, and it's just my theory, my opinion, that the pyramids, even though they're similar structures, I often wondered if they weren't done with different types of ET instead of just one. In other words, you hear about like the Anunnaki, the Greys, the reptilians, whomever. I don't go into, like, I don't know, they say there's like 85 different species. I don't get caught up in that. I believe there may have been maybe 3-4 at the most. That's my opinion, okay? I think that in certain areas of the world, that this is how people were interacted with different species. And I think that is one form of their technology, much like the ant people with the Hopi, they were totally different than the ones that Mesopotamian people dealt with. So, but that's my theory. That's my deal. That's what I come up with. So, yeah, when you ask that, it's kind of a trick question in a sense, but, that's the best I can explain it, I guess. But, yeah, I believe it was done by different extraterrestrial help, which goes back from where I talk about the human, the evolution of man. We all were separated on different continents. I think we were formed by different ETs. Each species was done separately, which is why you get different writings and different stories by these people. And it goes on from there. So all those people like in Mesopotamian had their ET. The people in the Mayan and Ecuador had their ETs. The ones over in Siberia or whoever had their different ETs, and so on and so forth. And that's, in the long and short, basically, I guess that's what I'm trying to say is it was all done by separate entities, so that's why they're different.
Interesting.
But that's just my theory.
Yes. Do you think it may be possible that all the pyramids on the planet were working in unison to strengthen the magnetic field around the Earth, so that the Earth isn't bombarded. Perhaps that this was built after the terraforming of the Earth, and they realized that they needed an extra energy source to protect the Earth from the radiation of space, and then built these pyramids so that they would essentially create a shield around the planet.
Well, you know, it's an interesting concept, and I'll tell you my belief on that is if you take the saltwater oceans and stuff like that, and you form electric current into them and stuff like that, that you already have basically a power base. You know, if you look at all the thousands of miles of ocean that we have surrounding the world, I think that's where your electrical grid actually comes from. Now, whether or not the pyramids introduced that power to that or whatever, it's a good question.
Harness the power from
yes.
the Earth energy grid.
Yes.
And then kind of just essentially just
let it go.
Send it out to so that it kind of
globally
works as a shield.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm kind of on of that same thought process as to the pyramids were being used as an energy device, and possibly to protect the Earth from the radiation of space.
Yes.
Because it goes back to the terraforming again, right? That the Earth was terraformed, and we're not really quite sure exactly what they used or how they went about doing it. But to me, it kind of makes sense that this is something that they would do, and then tow the moon in as well to give the Earth that balance.
Well,
because we read in ancient texts that there was a time before the moon when there were people living here on the planet, and the nights were dark, and there was no moon.
Right.
The moon was brought in.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's something that you really have to stop and wonder about too, because the way I see it, or the way I kind of look at it, when you're talking about moons and suns and such matters as that, and how the Earth was created in that Goldilocks zone is what they want to call it, which, okay, yeah, we got water and we got air and all that, but that's okay for us. That's not saying you couldn't go to Mars or to Neptune and be a different style creature and live in that particular atmosphere.
Exactly.
It's just because we live here, we think this way. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I look at it. Maybe people do live on the sun. I don't know. To me, it would be impossible, but who knows? You see these things all the time, talking about going in and out of the sun and doing this and that. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's true. But yeah, who's to say that there aren't, other things that happen? But as far as terraforming and stuff, I think they had a knowledge of how the Earth and everything orbits around the sun and all that stuff. And I think they knew eventually that it would take over and would keep growing once they got it started because of where it sat and what it did. I think they already had that all calculated out, and they knew that once, everything changed and went through its metamorphosis, so to speak, that it would sustain, and that's how it came to be, But yeah, why not?
Yes, very interesting subjects. We see, Nassim Haramein touched on it, and we can see that there are Earth-sized craft that are entering and exiting our sun, and then leaving like these huge solar flares behind.
Right.
Once they go into the sun, and we know that there's black spots in the sun, and those black spots may be wormholes that are going into a central hub, and then from that hub, these extraterrestrials are able to travel to different parts of the galaxy, or possibly even different universes.
Right.
And the theory that I subscribe to is that that the Anunnaki that we're all so familiar with. To me, I follow the Nemesis theory, to where I think that their home planet is within the Nemesis solar system, and that they're using their brown dwarf as a stargate to travel here to our stargate, because we're so close that they're able to travel back and forth. But there's only one confusion between that theory and what we see in antiquity, because in antiquity what we're seeing is we're seeing crafts that are short distance travel, because they're using rockets,
right?
Thruster power, and to me that thruster power means that they're using some sort of a chemical fuel,
right,
that can only last so long.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to the technology that we're seeing today with the UFOs, that they have anti-gravity technology. Now, I haven't seen nor heard any ET that's visited Earth using rocket power. So my opinion of that is that back in the day, we occupied and colonized Mars and Earth, and people from Mars were the ones that were using these crafts to travel back and forth between Earth and Mars, and then they had the type of technology that we have today, that we're using, like with the V2 rocket and such. And I think that's where that's coming from. I don't really particularly believe that that's ET of today that we hear about, say, like in the Book of Enoch and Book of Ezekiel, where there's a wheel and within the wheel with thundering boom and fire and air and stuff like that. We only see that in our own rockets today.
Well, that depends.
So
on,
I think.
Well, not to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but I think maybe some of that fire that they see maybe when they enter Earth's atmosphere, and it's not necessarily the craft itself. Much like our space shuttle, let's say, when it comes back in, or used to anyway, when it came back into the Earth's atmosphere, it looked like a fireball until it came down, and then it touched down and landed and, did whatever. And of course, that takeoff, we seen the fire and stuff like that. So I'm just speculating. I believe, like you said, that maybe back that many years ago that it was rocket booster, but not now. Obviously, we're so far under advanced compared to them that it's just, we can't wrap our minds around it right now. But I just thought I'd throw that in there, though, as a thought. Maybe their technology, even back then, may be more advanced than what we realized. But who's to say? I mean, absolutely. But yeah, I can definitely get along with that, no doubt. Well,
the Anunnaki are using a different type of craft to travel back and forth, between Nibiru and Earth. I'm just simply saying that humanity, as we know it, is an extraterrestrial in itself to this solar system. And we had colonized Mars and Earth at the same time, because when we go back and we look in history and we talk to the Aborigines of Australia, they always say that the Pleiades, we came from the Pleiades system, and then we occupied the Pleiades system from the Sirius star system, and that human colonies and civilizations are really they're dime a dozen, where just spread out all over the universe and all over the galaxy, possibly even other galaxies. So for us to be here, I think that we're extraterrestrials to this world. Now, there's a lot of talk about the genetic engineering that we were created to be a slave species to mine gold. Personally, I don't follow that theory myself, but I can have an explanation for the genetic engineering of the human species. For me, the way I see it is that if you want to go live on Pluto, and because you're an Earthling and you're accustomed to the pressures of the Earth and the atmospheric pressures and the gravity and kind of what have you of the Earth, when you go to Pluto, you're going to be out of your comfort zone, and the low gravity is really going to mess with your internal organs.
Right.
So if you get pregnant say you get pregnant on Pluto, and the child that you have on Pluto is going to be native to that planet, and to me you can genetically engineer someone to be an inhabitant of a certain planet and to be to be accustomed to the atmospheric pressures and the air and the gravity of that planet. So let's say we created someone that lives that's native to Pluto. And then if we brought them here to Earth, now if we wanted to, if we wanted to move house and we brought that person here, we would have to genetically recode their genetics in order for them to be able to survive here on Earth. So I think the same thing happened to us when we came here to the solar system. We genetically engineered ourselves to be able to inhabit this world. Nothing like what the late Zachariah Sitchin is saying, though. I don't really support that theory as a safe species.
Thank you.
To me, that's more. It goes back to the ideology of that we evolved from monkeys, and that we only use 10% of our brain, and where 90% of our DNA is junk. That's to bring the human spirit down, to bring our energy down, to make us believe that we're slaves and that we only use 10% of our brain. If you tell someone that they use 10% of their brain, they're only going to use 10% of their brain. They're not going to use the entire brain that's at their disposal. So I think this again goes back to the establishment of misinformation and misguidedness to lead us off course. So I myself don't think that we're a slave species by any means. We're a very old species, been around a very long time. And like I just said a few minutes ago, that our human colonies, civilizations are all over the universe. And we're not anything special here on this planet. It may be that we're being visited here to this world because of whatever may have happened to us in antiquity that caused us to become a species with amnesia, because we've essentially forgotten everything and that where we come from, our history. So in that, we don't know where we're headed, because if you don't know where you come from, you can't really pave a road for yourself as to where you're going. We need to know where we come from in order for us to continue the path that we're on, whether it be spiritually or physically. To me, they're hand in hand. Physicality and spiritually, they're the same thing.
Man, you said a mouthful there, no doubt about it, brother. I am totally on board with that, 100%, no doubt about it. Yeah, and people get mad at me when I debunk Zachariah Sitchin himself, not to get off on a tangent or nothing, but, and I still have people, even in the other groups, that just rely on his every word and everything, and I'm like, gosh, you guys have got to stop doing that. Read the real text, go back. Everything has been laid out for you. Go back and do some research. Don't rely just on that one damn book or however many he had. It's just not right, and you got to know and understand exactly what's being said and what was said, and I go back, like I said, to my theory about different entities, not just the Anunnaki, but different other ones and I honestly believe there was an all-out war at one time between a few of them. They came here and said, hey, get away from my people and you stay away from my people, and we'll be happy and whatever. And I think that's how it actually worked out. And I think they, and I think they had a treaty with themselves, and they said, okay, we'll give you this part of the world to work on, and we're going to work on this part and whatever. And whether or not they coincided later on, I couldn't tell you. But there was definitely some evidence of destruction. And, things were wiped out, including the human race and certain animals and whatever, and was started over again. Now, whether that was on purpose by another ET against another ET, who knows? That very well could be. But you look at places like Pumapunku, for instance, one of my favorite places of all time. That place was literally tore apart. Mm-hmm. For what reason? Definitely nothing natural did that. We know that. You get petrification all around the world. You see this sand turned into glass and molten, things like that. So something had to go on. There was definitely wars. Yeah. There was definitely way beyond our technology. So just again another theory, but that's how I look at it.
Well, we can already see that there was a conflict in prehistory. We can read about it in the Mahabharata and the Ramayana and so on, where the Indian literature is telling us is that there were cities in the sky that were at war with each other, and they're shooting lightning at one another. Mohenjo-daro is a prime example of a city that was destroyed possibly by a nuclear attack because the skeletons are radioactive. And then we can go over to Sodom and Gomorrah. Same thing happened there.
Exactly.
But I follow what you're saying, but the way that I think about it is that I think after we had colonized the Earth and there was an exchange of ambassadors between Earth and Mars, and that at that time that the two political parties or the ruling governments or whatever they may have been, they had a conflict with one another that caused the war to happen. Right. And possibly the Paracas skulls that we see here on Earth, they may have been Martian in their origins, and hence that's why we still see very few of them. That they may have been ambassadors here to Earth, and then when the war began, that they were just trapped here, and then eventually they passed away, and then they were deitized and mummified, and then just left in the desert.
Right.
So for me, I think the origins of the Paracas goes back to Mars, and that there was a conflict between the two worlds, because we see the huge gash on Mars may have been an electrical weapon that was used, because we have blueberries on Mars as well, like little spheres that are perfectly round that have caught the blue light, and that only happens when there's an electrical charge given to the ground, and the dirt and the water essentially they become spherical in nature, and the surface of Mars is littered with that. And then now we come here to Earth, and then we have the Grand Canyon, which is almost similar to what we see on Mars. The Grand Canyon is not built by a river, as the academia would have us believe, because if that was the case, every river system on the planet would be a Grand Canyon.
Exactly.
So I think that there was weaponized. There was something weaponized here on Earth and on Mars that caused the demise of the Martian civilization, because we know that Mars is radioactive, and there's a lot of radiation there. So, and there's artificial radiation as well. So possibly people went underground and took refuge there. Yeah. And they just simply don't have the resource at their disposal to travel between the planets like they used to back in the day. Or maybe perhaps there's a treaty, like you said, that will stay away from these people for X amount of time, and then we'll come back and then reintroduce ourselves to them. Possibly the inner Earth theory relates back to Mars, to where people had to take refuge underground, and then the ones that got away and got off the planet and found refuge here on Earth brought these stories back with them, that they had to flee underground and go into the labyrinths and so and such and such, and then over time the stories have just become distorted and then also misunderstood, where it's being related to the Earth in itself, but we know that Mars is similar to Earth. So there's two Earths in our solar system that are both in the Goldilocks zone, and it's being misconstrued or misunderstood, or possibly just outright lied about it to us, so that we don't question what's happening on Mars.
Right, I definitely agree. And or there was another planet, which is now our asteroid belt, that was just totally destroyed. and they took refuge here on Earth or did whatever, and this and that. But we do know that something definitely happened here. You look at the underground dwellings that are being found, like in Turkey, for instance, 300 and some odd feet down or even longer, you're talking 13, 14 stories or more, 300, whatever. And other places over towards Germany and Romania and different other ones that they're finding now and stuff. They're just phenomenally built. And these other places, what's the one there with it's right inside of the mountain. The Indiana Jones movie was done there. I can't think of the name of it. That one where they literally carved into the mountain and they made that big temple and place there. I can't.
The skull. Their latest release of the Indiana Jones. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, no, the one where he did the Holy Grail. And he all right. He went into that temple. I can't think what the name of that place is offhand, but that place. Yeah, there you go. It was carved into the rock. It was taken. They chiseled this whole city, vast area inside of that mountain. They hand dug. They dug this. It's not. And the architecture and the designs and the motif is just phenomenal, And when you look at things like that, and like we were talking about the underground places there in Turkey and different other things, and look at how elaborate some of those places are, with the columns that are down there and different things. Why on earth would you do that unless you were going to stay there for a very long time? Obviously,
that's right.
You wouldn't do that. If it's only going to be a few years, you just dig a hole and live in it. You know what I'm saying? You wouldn't wouldn't go to the extreme they did on these bad boys. No way. And
this goes back to what I was saying earlier, that when the ice age set in about 100,000 years ago,
yes,
that our ancestors were forced to go underground, and possibly that's when Deir Kuyu and all these other places were built. Deir Kuyu can house up to I think 50,000 people, 60,000 people. That's huge.
It's huge.
Able to have livestock in there as well. So
exactly.
It's technically advanced, more than what we can do today. Now, it's funny that you had mentioned the asteroid belt. I've been tossing the idea around in my head for a long time that possibly the asteroid belt may be the remnants of a Martian moon.
Yeah.
Because if we actually travel to the asteroid zone, we're not going to be dodging asteroids like they show us in Hollywood movies.
Right.
In fact, we'll see very distant pins of light, because these asteroids are millions of miles apart.
Right.
They're not banging off of each other. You can freely travel through the asteroid zone, and if you actually take all the material in the asteroid zone and compress it into one object, you would have it's something about the size, maybe about the 2/3 the size of our own moon.
Right.
And then that possibly have been an ancient Martian moon that served the same purpose as our moon does for the Earth. Now, if somebody came along and destroyed our moon, we'd be in some serious trouble.
Absolutely.
And I think the same thing happened in Mars, because we have those two asteroids, Phobos and Mobos, I believe.
Right.
They're called. Don't quote me on the name, but I'm pretty sure one of them is Phobos. But they're the remnants of an ancient Martian moon, because it doesn't make sense as to how two asteroids, and only two asteroids, would get caught in Martian gravity and everything else would be, they would just go by. So that to me doesn't hold any water. So possibly the gash that we see on Mars is a part of that same attack.
Right.
As to they may have had the moon colonized. Who knows? And they decided to destroy the moon.
Yeah.
Right. To safeguard whatever it is that they were doing. It's all speculation, of course, but
sure.
I've tossed that idea around in my head that it may have possibly been a moon.
Yeah.
And people's idea of an asteroid belt is what they see in Hollywood movies,
correct,
where you're dodging asteroids, like in that Bruce Willis movie. I forgot what it's called now, but
they go up and drill
Deep
it,
Impact or Armageddon.
right.
I think it was Armageddon, where they had to go into follow that asteroid, and they were
they're going to blow it up,
dodging debris and such.
Yeah.
Right? Or in Star Wars or whatever. Right? It's all Hollywood, so
yeah. Good idea, but yeah. Cool.
They're fun to watch, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, Lord, good stuff. Oh my goodness.
Like the image of the extraterrestrials that were given, like the Gray, for instance. I myself don't really think that ET looks like that. That's more like a Hollywood version of what an extraterrestrial is, and they may be close to the actual truth, but I highly doubt it.
Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. They're pretty close, and I say that only because I've witnessed them myself, and I'm not trying to debunk anybody out there that's thinking otherwise or whatever. But there is a lot of, what you see now as far as grays and stuff and what they're depicting of, yeah, they're definitely different. But if how do I explain this without getting too crazy on people? Well, if you ever look at my picture that I use, like on my Facebook and stuff, that's pretty close. That's pretty close to what they look like. Okay, that's what I'm going to tell you. Of course, I was young and whatever, and to actually say like they were wearing suits and stuff like that, I can't tell you that. I don't remember, if it was, to me, they were more flesh-like, the whole body. If someone would say, well, they're wearing spacesuits, I would have said no, they weren't. But that's just me, that's my my thing. Of course, as you get older, your mind kind of, does things a little differently than they did when they were younger. And of course, when you're younger, everything is spectacular and so you let your imagination run a little bit, whatever. But as far as the grays go, though, they actually do look like that. I'll let you know that. So that's
I think they're close, but they're not giving us the full image. It's close enough to get your imagination going, but not close enough that they can give you a portrait of what the great ET may possibly look like.
Exactly.
I've talked to a lot of people that have been abducted, have them on my show a number of times, and the descriptions that they've given me are almost similar to what the image of Grace that we see, but not really.
Right.
It's different, but the same at the same time. It's that's the best sense I can make of that.
Yeah.
But it's I'm glad that they're doing it anyways. Throwing it out into the world so that we can start using our imagination as to how they may look.
Right.
And I find it fantastic. I love it.
Well, it's just and that's the thing. See, now when I first got into this, after I had my visitation and stuff, I would not have ever guessed in a million years that there were other type of extraterrestrials. Okay, to me, the Greys were the only ones that ever existed, and I stood by that for many, many years because they were the ones that I saw, and had my visitation with. It wasn't until later on, as I got older, and I started seeing more and more of people talking about their abductions and their different things and their drawings, and things like that, that I started to realize, okay, maybe the Greys aren't the only ones. And then, like you said, we were talking earlier about how you read about all these other entities that's written in writings and different stories and stuff like that is when you start to realize, geez, they are not the only ones. You know, there has to be many more. But like I said earlier, you know, they speculate like 85 different species. I don't know if I can go along with that. To me, like I said, 4 or 5 maybe that I can pretty much verify. Well, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know what I'm saying? But I think Hollywood and a lot of other people out there that are just monkeying around doing whatever, put these other ones in the format, so to speak, just to get people's goat, so to speak, you know, keep them off kilter. So I don't know how we could ever prove it, but that's just how I'm going with it, you know.
I'm of the same line of thinking that we're being visited by, you know, possibly 4 or 5, maybe 6 different physical species.
Right.
And then on the other hand, we're being visited by interdimensional beings as well.
Sure.
You know, I work closely with a friend of mine, Saul Warner, from UFO2go.com. He's located out of Australia, and he does a lot of interdimensional video work, and he has some very compelling evidence as to being visited by interdimensional beings, and they're able to cloak their ships to make their ships appear to be transparent. Yeah. And you know, it looks like the sky is there, but in actual reality, it's being reflected off of the vessel to make it look like it's the sky. So he has a very interesting work. So if you're interested in that, I suggest go check out his site. Cool. UFO2go.com. It's a very, very cool site, and you know, he has a lot of work put into it. I certainly enjoy the site myself.
Well, I believe in the cloaking part, and I'm going to tell you why I say that, because I don't know if you've ever seen my story or not. I'll send it to you, or you can read it. It's in the Ancient Alien group page there. It's under the file section of the group page. But anyway, okay. I talk about the day of my visitation, or actually the day before. You know, I first seen the craft before nighttime, okay? And what had happened was when I spotted the craft, it was so close and so big and so huge that I was just dumbstruck. And I was like frozen for a few seconds. And when I hollered at my sister to take a look at it, and I turned around and pointed up to it, it was gone. No sight, no sound, no nothing. Just totally disappeared. Well, it wasn't until, you know, later on in life that I came to realize that this thing may have very well either been hologrammed, which I don't believe. I think it was real. I honestly, it had to be real. But it cloaked itself to where when I turned around to holler and I pointed up at it, it just flipped the switch and went invisible. It never moved. It was still there the whole time. And I often now that I think about it, that's exactly what I tell people it happened. You know, that it was there 1 second and gone the next. It wasn't that it flew away. It just made itself to the point where I couldn't see it. It camouflaged itself. You know, but I just yeah. I was marked as a young child.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I totally support that. I think that these guys, they have a technology to where they can pinpoint as to who can see them and who can't. And then as soon as they realize that they're being viewed, they either take off or they cloak themselves and then put on a light show, like we see sometimes those UFOs that break off into like 6 or 7 different lights into orbs, and then they start moving around, and then they come back and unify as one. I think that's more of a cloak and dagger kind of a trickery. I think that's what it is, to take your eyes off of the actual craft.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to mention, switch a little bit of gears here. You had mentioned earlier Pumapunku. Pumapunku is, a very big interest of mine, and I love Pumapunku because, if there's any evidence on the planet that there was an advanced civilization, Pumapunku is one of the spots as to where the residents of ET may have been, or possibly even India, because the intricate architecture that we see there, the technology that went behind there. But when it comes to Pumapunku, Pumapunku has, it has relations with Easter Island, because when we look at Pumapunku, it looks like there was a huge flood, and everything has been buried in mud, and it's been strewn all over the place. And then when we go to Easter Islands, we see the same thing there, where the Moai are buried. Half their body is buried in mud. So there must have been some sort of a cataclysm back in the day that caused this to happen. Now, I was fortunate enough to have an interview with Klaus Donna about a month and a half ago, and he gave us some very interesting information that through LiDAR tests, what's confirmed is that the Moai, behind the Moai and deep beneath the Moai, they have discovered chambers that consist of bones and precious stones and gold and such. Now we know that there's no gold on Easter Island, or there's any precious stones on Easter Island. So the theory is what I've been kind of thinking about inside my head is that that the lost continent of Mu, that was connected with Easter Island, Hawaii, Japan, back in the day when that continent collapsed in on itself into the Pacific Ocean, that caused a huge tsunami, and that tsunami was global, and it was able to get up to Bolivia and Peru and Argentina and such, to where this damage was done. It was a whole a huge tide of mud that came in that buried Pumapunku and destroyed it, and then as well that same flood went over to Easter Islands, the same event that buried the Pumapunku, I believe, is responsible for burying the Moai on Easter Islands. Now, Easter Islands, I believe, as Mr. Donna had said, that those are tombstones of ancient Lemurian kings. And Easter Islands is essentially the same thing as the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. It's serving the same purpose, but far, far older, from the time of Lemuria, Mu, whatever you want to call it. It has a number of different names, but it's beginning to make sense now that those Moai would be tombstones, because beneath them and behind them there are chambers with bones in them. So they could possibly be bones of ancient kings of Mu. Wow, that's pretty interesting. I like that. And then also Lake Titicaca would be part of that same same event. The salt flats that are in the United States, that are in South America, would still be part of that same event, as to where that ocean water came in, the salt water, and then eventually over time the salt water, the water evaporated but left the salt behind, and then that's why we have these salt flats all over the planet. And that's dispersion of salt water. Okay, now see, that takes me back to my theory about how everything got underwater when the Earth shifted, and the water changed its basins. I'm wondering if that may have been the actual time period and that we're talking about, if that may not have occurred. Maybe all those things were oceanside, and when it flipped or did whatever it did, for whatever reason, that it caused all that, and like you said, the water just made that catastrophic flood. It went through and just wiped out everything in sight, and once it settled and did whatever, over millions of years of evaporation, of course, is what we got our coastal lines from now. And it's a very good possibility. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because the same thing is happening in Indonesia at Gunung Padang, where the pyramid at Gunung is in itself has been buried in mud.
Yeah.
It's a step pyramid, but we're getting the same correlations again and again and again, where it's in Gunung Padang, it's in Easter Island, Pumapumpu, and God knows how many other sites that we haven't discovered yet because they're buried underneath mud.
Right.
So it could possibly be that there may have been a pole shift, a reversal of poles, an electromagnetic shift that caused the Earth to do whatever that it did. Yeah. Possibly when Mu fell into the Pacific Ocean, but also on the other hand, it could have been Antarctica that was on the move. It may have been that Antarctica back in antiquity was in between Brazil and West Africa, and through a partial Earth crust displacement, Antarctica slipped to the position where it's at today, and hence dispersing that water. Right. Imagine a continent the size of Antarctica that's on the move, and that would disperse a lot of water, and then thus creating a huge tsunami. But if it's all part of like one event, where if Mu collapsed in on itself in the Pacific Ocean, and then also Antarctica is on the move, that's a lot of water that's being displaced, and then we can tell from antiquity that every culture has that flood story, and it could be that one of the floods that we're talking about may have been due to that one particular event that caused people to take refuge underground, as we were talking earlier. So I think all of it is connected.
Yes, absolutely, and I don't think we're far. From what we're saying. We're pretty close to it. Right on the money. I definitely agree. They say we're having problems again with the sound. They say every time you move, they can't hear you or something. I'm not sure, but I can hear you just fine. It's got to be somewhere in between the connections here. I'm thinking is what I'm having problems with. So it's not actually on your end or anything like that. I think it's just the way it is right now. Unfortunately, I do apologize, everybody. Sandra, I appreciate you letting me know. I'm trying to adjust as I go along here, but I think it's more internet problem than it is anything else. So it's not instrumentational, so to speak. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I see the comments by Sandra Jones.
Oh, there you go.
Clarence, stop him moving, please.
Yeah.
No problem, Sandra. I'll stay stationary as much as I possibly can.
Right. Yeah. I don't actually think it's you though. I think it's the internet itself. But that's well, we'll do what we can. But anyway, we're kind of running out of time. 2 hours has gone by. We're only got about 5 minutes left. So yeah, ain't that something? It's just how it goes, though. It's like we talked earlier. The more we get into something, the less time you have. So it's like
that's right. That's
right. But Omar, we got to do this again, brother. I love talking to you. We got so much in common. We think a lot alike. It's just amazing. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on here, because I just had that feeling that once we touched base, we were going to, basically be almost the same, on the same page and everything, which is awesome. It's just awesome. And I love it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your show. It's a pleasure and an honor. And as we were saying earlier, it's always I always enjoy connecting with like-minded people.
Yes.
And even if they're not like-minded, I still enjoy connecting with people and having that exchange of thought.
Absolutely.
Because it's healthy.
Yes.
And discussion and debate is like this is very, very healthy. So I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for thinking of me and having me on your show here today.
Oh, you're more than welcome anytime. And we definitely, like I said, we definitely got to do it again. It's just, I enjoy the hell out of it. And it's just so great to be able to actually talk to somebody and just verify some of the things that I've been working through and vice versa, I'm sure. Okay, so maybe we're not 100%. Or maybe even 90% or whatever, but we're getting damn close, I think. And the way that we're doing it and the way we're thinking about it, I don't think we can get much better, until they actually come right out and say, yep, you guys are right, a little bit off on this, but here you go, whatever. Until that happens, so we got to take what we got and run with it, I guess, it's about the best we can do. But
yeah, I'm hoping the time is sooner than later, but even if it's not sooner and even if it's later, I think it's we're doing fine with what we're doing with our broadcasts, my show, your show, and a friend of mine, Leonard, his show that he has with Orion Rising, very informative, talented man, knows a lot of information, so I always enjoy watching him. So it's collaboration between all of us, and I hope that continues to grow stronger as time moves forward, so that we can continue to bring this type of information to people. As I say to my team and watchers, that we have a huge responsibility on our heads. That when people come and join our groups, or when they watch our shows, or when they follow us, they're putting their trust in us, and it's our responsibility to bring them the information that they're seeking. And because we're fortunate enough to be involved in this field and have access to information which most people will not have, I just find that it's our responsibility to bring this information forward and spread the knowledge, brother. That's at the end of the day, that's what our goal is. So I look forward to collaborating and working with you in the future.
Fantastic.
And I would love to do another show with you, or maybe I can get you on my show.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, man, why not? Sure. Absolutely. Fantastic. Yes. All righty. Well, Omar, I'm going to have to say goodbye to you here. I only got about a minute left, and we'll definitely got to get together again. No doubt about it. And,
thank you very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to slide this one back. We're going to take him out of the picture real quick. Just a couple announcements. He's waving at you, saying goodbye to everybody. A couple of quick announcements. Bill Peters is doing also the Slice. He just came out with a brand new one today. I posted it on the Closer Encounters page. It's about alien abductions. He's doing live interviews with people. So if you want to catch that, by all means, please do. There's also a new documentary that just came out. I did post that also on my page. If you would check that out also, you can catch that on Amazon.com. If you are a Prime member, you can actually watch it for free. And I'm trying to do all this really quickly here. I can't remember the guy's name that did that. But anyway, you see the posting. Check it out. New documentary. And I'm sorry I can't remember his name offhand. I got so much going on here, but that's my problem. But anyway, once again, I thank Omar for being with us. It's been a great show. Thank everybody for being here. I'm going to wave at you. I got 10 seconds to sign off. Good night, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow night here, 6 o'clock, same time, same channel, and hopefully everything will work out fine. So enjoy the evening, everybody, and thank you very much. Thank you, Omar.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on. Good night, guys.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Don't hang up on me, though.
Okay. We'll keep it going.
Yeah. Fantastic show. I love that alien head that you have.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you all for listening.
Yeah, I love it.
It's
wonderful.
Please remember to like, follow, and share. Until we meet again, keep your eyes to the skies. Thank you.